Hi, and welcome to a new episode of Don't Be a Man About It. Today, my guest, Bijay Shah, the National Director at BNI, is here with me today, and I'm so happy to have you with me, Bijay, to talk about a very interesting topic. And I think it's very much needed also in not only our personal lives, but in our professional lives. We'll get into that later on, but I really just want to say welcome to the show.
Thank you, Raf. It's a pleasure to be here. Actually, an honor to be honest.
Thank you so much. So, BJ, let's start with tell me, how is your heart doing today?
Well, it's a Sunday morning, and we've just had a great weekend, so it's in a good place. If that's what you mean, physically, I think I'll need to do a medical to really get it checked how it's doing. But no, I'm feeling really, really good. Thank you.
Well, usually my guests, when I ask them that question, each one of them have his own definition. So some people would say, my heart is feeling okay today. My heart is feeling a little bit emotional today. One of my guests, I think it was Matt Lucas, he asked me back, how's my heart doing? And I didn't know how to answer. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go for great fit.
No, it's yeah, like you said, it's different things for different people, right?
Yeah, true.
Um, Had you asked me that question maybe a few years ago, I would have thought you're asking about health,
Hmm.
because of course, you hear so many stories about disease and cardiac disease. But lately, as I mean, I've been following a lot of people, listening to a lot of people. So, and then, being on this particular podcast, this great show of yours, I could relate to what you might be meaning or asking. And that's what I meant. I feel I'm in a good place. So yes, and it's a just had a weekend, and a weekend is always a great time to wind
Energizing.
down, reflect on the week before,
Yeah.
look forward to the following week and things to come. So yes, good start.
I like that. So may it always be in a good place. So, BJ, you are the national director at BNI, and I personally joined the one of the chapters, the Champions chapter, because you also encouraged me and you gave me that recommendation, which I really would like to thank you for that. So, tell me,
Congratulations and welcome.
thank you. I'm very excited. But so tell me, I know that BNI actually came from a very personal story. Could you share that with us a little bit?
Sure, yeah. I was actually working in London.
Hmm.
So that's when I first came about BNI. I was working for an American retail stockbroker, and a lot of my colleagues were members of BNI, and I was relatively new. Um, and they said, "Look, BJ, the best way to, it's we rely a lot on referrals and word of mouth recommendations. So they say to me that you got to be part of BNI because you're going to meet a lot of people who will refer your business." And I said, "Oh, that's fantastic," because the other option when you're starting out new at that level was really going knocking on doors and cold calling people. And not cold calling with the intention of actually doing any hard sell, but really, meet as many people as you can, build up a
Connect.
relationship. It's a long process, and with cold calls, there's a lot of rejection that happens. So it requires a lot of hard skin to really do that. So they encouraged me and they said, "Look, why don't you look at joining into BNI, and you'll find a lot of value in it." And I said, "Yeah, that sounds great." So I got myself invited to a few of these sessions, and unfortunately, every meeting that I went to already had somebody in my category already, a member, and they only allow one person. So the idea is to avoid any direct competition. And I just couldn't really get into a chapter, and I said, "Well, what does it take to actually find a chapter of the vacancy?" And they said you got two choices. Either you could just sit and wait till a vacancy arises, because from time to time people do move on, or we could actually help you get started in a new chapter. And I said, "Oh, that's fantastic. I don't want to just sit around waiting, so why not actually get involved in starting a new chapter? Unfortunately, at that time, where I was living, they didn't have the right infrastructure, because to start a chapter you need somebody who can help you with that process from BNI. So they were still building their team in that part of the country, and I said, okay, I'll wait. But that wait became a bit too long, and I just forgot about things, and you just carry on, with other things. So things just moved on. I kind of forgot about it. I didn't realize that it was a global organization, where you have chapters in many other countries. I just thought it's a local sort of community service sort of organization. And I think it was about 2 or 3 years later, my wife and I, we found ourselves in Dubai. We were looking at an opportunity here. I was invited to join a local company, and we were just here for a couple of weeks. But it was pure coincidence, you could call it serendipity. I received a call from BNI while I was in Dubai. Obviously, they didn't know I was in Dubai. I had my cell phone on roaming, and they said, "Look, we have you on our list, and we're trying to invite you to join our new group.
Yeah.
We are having, an information session. Why don't you come along?" And I said, firstly, I was like, "What is BNI?" And then obviously all the things came back. I said, "Yeah, of course." That early morning networking group. And I was going to go back, of course, before we made a decision to move to Dubai. I had to, go back. And I said, "Yeah, I'll come and visit your meeting." But then I was thinking, maybe I should join BNI in Dubai if we're going to start out afresh over here. So we started looking around, and we found that there was no BNI. We sent out an inquiry on by email, and they're headquartered in the US. Got a reply saying, "Yeah, we'd love to have somebody actually take up the franchise for the UAE." So when I went back, the following week, I did go to the information session. I met a few people, and I was really looking at it the intention of getting to know more about the organization. And they were so supportive, so helpful, and really got interested. This was like everybody's trying to help each other, and you're like, there must be a catch somewhere. And they're, "No, we just want to try and see if we can help you." And I was like, "Wow, you don't even know
So,
me."
yeah. Yeah.
Um, so anyway, cut a long story short, a year later, we ended up actually launching our first chapter. I was doing it as a side hustle, so to say. It wasn't really a long-term, business vision,
Mhm.
as much as it's a business. It was a franchise, but it was more like a part-time thing. And I'll tell you when things changed for me. It was actually a few months into it when I met a particular member who came up to me, an elderly gentleman, probably in his early 60s, and he came up to me at one of the sessions, a bit teary eyed, and he just wanted to give me a hug. I wish we could do that these days. Of course, with,
Yeah.
with the current
Same here.
situation, we can't
I miss.
hug people or even for that matter meet everybody, right? But in those days, and I was like, uh, I wasn't sure exactly how to react. And I said, "Yeah, look, you want a hug? I'll give you a hug." And he hugged me tight and he said, "I just want to thank you." And I said, "You're welcome. What is this about?" He said, "No, I just need to share a personal story with you." And I said, "Yeah." I wasn't sure exactly what this was going to.
Where
And say,
this is
"Look,
going?
I've just
Yeah.
had my daughter got married last month,
Oh,
and as you would expect, I stood up and gave the father of the bride speech. I'm never one of those who would actually have that confidence to speak in public. I'm probably, as a father, it's an expectation. My daughter would have an expectation. My wife would. All the members of the family would. But I am just not that kind of person. But it's only having joined BNI, I have gotten the confidence of speaking in public, speaking confidently, and actually, standing up and because what happens in a BNI meeting is every week when you go to the meeting, you stand up and speak. You get 30 to 60 seconds. And he said that was probably the best gift. My daughter said it was the best gift that I could give her because they never expected that from me. And this is just amazing. And, to me, that was like, wow.
yeah.
Um, you never realize the kind of impact that you can have on other people with the things that you do. And this was nothing to do with me personally. It was just he was part of a system called BNI, and that sort of empowered and enabled him to do what he did. But that was very touching to me because it's only then I realized that this is not just about business or referrals. It's much more than that. It's different things to different people,
Yeah.
but imagine the kind of impact that you can have on different people if you are to, really do this. So I came home that day and I came to my wife and I said, you know what, I think we need to do this full time because this is just great. Every day you're meeting different people, sharing their stories on how this is helping them. And if we could, do this like full time and
And imagine the impact.
imagine the kind of impact that can have. And that's how we
There's a statement.
absolutely.
There,
So, long story short, here we
yeah.
are 16 years later. Yeah.
I was telling you that there's a statement that I like, which is give as much as you get, maybe a little more. And I feel that by practicing this approach in the business industry to give as much as we receive, even a little more, that could change the business future and the business's perception on the long term if that would be applied for compassion, kindness, empathy, the human senses that sadly we lack in the business. I know that you're someone who's very compassionate and you
Yeah.
you have it as a priority and a high value for you. So tell me more about why do most leaders shy away from being compassionate?
I'm not too sure whether I would agree with if most leaders share about being compassionate. Yeah, you see all sorts of leaders out there, absolutely. I think what it is, the way capitalism and the corporate world out there is thought of is it's survival of the fittest, competition. But I think all that's changing, Rahaf.
Mm.
I think the C word now is collaboration. If you actually talk to the current generation or the generation to come tomorrow, I mean, when I speak to my 13-year-old son, and when I look and I observe his behavior amongst, his peers, his friends, they are there to share everything and give everything. And when I looked at my younger self, I was always taught that look, you always got to be ahead. When it came to exams and tests, it was like, okay, you don't share things openly. You want to be there. You may not openly share things with your friends because you got to get those A grades. And when I look at my son, he's like, yeah, I can get an A, but why can't all my other friends also get the same? And so if I can help them get the same, that doesn't really change anything for me. And I'm thinking, that's competition, and so the mindset is different. But I think as human beings, we are wired to help each other as a species. Socially, we would, if you're out there and you saw somebody in trouble or danger, naturally, most people are good people and they would go out and see if they can help them. I think last year, with what happened, and what we're all facing currently, that's actually a real testament to the power of how we can all get together. There were so many stories out there, people helping each other, helping in so many other ways, right? In terms of
Yeah,
mental support, moral support. But what's happened is when it came to business, that wasn't the case.
true.
It was, like I said,
A lot of
it's
layoffs, a
cutthroat,
lot of change.
but that's changing slowly. And our tagline in BNI is, yeah, yeah, change. So I think when you say most leaders, I think, yeah, when they're in that position, they probably feel the only way to survive or get ahead is, to be that. But there's a gentleman by the name of Adam Grant. He's written a book called Give and Take. And if anybody gets a chance to read that, it's a fantastic book. And what he talks about is true leaders or real successful people out there are the givers. But unfortunately, what also happens is the givers also get taken advantage of. So there are two kinds of givers. You have the givers who are conscious of what they're doing and they know, and they are out there to help others, but they can also sense the other person, and if the other person is purely a taker, then they will stay away from that. They want to surround themselves with other fellow givers or abundant minded people.
Mm.
But what happens is, unfortunately, when people don't know, they go out giving, and they get taken advantage of. So what he talks about in the book is, if you can identify those people, then of course you stay away. But there are takers, so they're literal people who will just be there to take, take, take. And then we have matchers, people who measure everything. You calculate and say, okay, he's given me this, so let me give that. I've gotten this, so let me give that. And a true giver will actually give without
So
expectation.
selectively
They'll
giving.
always, like you said, go over and above. Sorry?
The third type would be selective when they give.
I wouldn't say it's calculated. Calculated. It's only, it's like, I scratch your back, you scratch my back.
Yeah.
They will only give when they know that they're going to get something. So they try to match it. He calls them matchers. And at the end of the day, he say, the best trait would be to be a giver. The givers sleep better at night. Whereas the other ones, they're always on. They'll have to look behind their back at all times. And then it's not sustainable. But yeah, you get all kinds. And in our organization, what we want to really and ingrain in our members is the value of giving, true giving.
Mm.
So I come across lots of stories every day. I do come across members saying, I've done a lot of giving, but I'm not really getting much out of this. And I totally understand that. So then it's understanding, in what ways are they giving. And sometimes you could be giving and other people want to help you back. But I think this is where, perhaps, in context of this particular topic, compassion, um, there are people out there who want to help you, but you also need to be specific or help them, or you got to be able to express openly. If you don't express, if you don't communicate, then it's very difficult for other people to help you. And one of the messages I would share is, of course, it's very important to build a trusted network of people. Surround yourself with the right kind of people who share the same values as you, and then allow yourself to be vulnerable and open up to them. Because once you do that, then you'll get all the help and support you need. But if you keep it all to yourself, then unfortunately, it can't really help much. So it really comes down to building the right network, I would say. And a network doesn't have to be meeting lots of new people all the time or having hundreds of people out there. It could be having a small intimate support group of people, 5, 10, 15, 20 people, but these are people closest to you, and you can relate strongly to them and you can be open with them.
I love what you said about the givers and the takers. I am a giver, and I learned the hard. I don't want to say the hard way, but I learned it at a very, let's say, old age, that sometimes giving, also a giver has to have boundaries in a way where he doesn't allow himself to be taken for granted, but at the same time, not in a way that it affects his compassion or empathy or kindness, and to not connect
Absolutely,
both
yes.
things at the same time.
Yeah.
Create your boundaries, but stay compassionate. Say what you want, vocalize how do you want to help and receive help, but don't get thick-skinned. So that's a very, very important distinction, especially in our corporate world.
Absolutely, yeah. You hit it on the nail. Exactly.
Yeah, I
It's
love that.
important to be conscious. Yeah.
So I sadly we live in in a society where they encourage the culture of stress, and having a burnout is something very normal. Yes, it's getting better, but it's still common and it still happens, where employees would share with pride that I'm a workaholic. I work on weekends, I'm working late, I'm barely seeing my family, I'm barely sleeping. And their managers encourage that behavior by giving them bonuses, promising of promotions, promising of whatever it is, and you know how the market is going. So how can we shift? How do you think? I know it's a long road, but things are getting better. So how can leaders shift that culture of stress to culture of compassion and yet stay, productive? And I don't know, I believe that would increase productivity.
Yeah, that's a great question, Raf. Like you said, it is a long road. It does come down from the top, especially when you're talking about the corporate world. Um, what truly does an organization stand for? I think it starts with that question: what is their purpose?
Mm,
Um, because if it's all driven mainly for profits, then this is not going to work. But there's a new movement now called conscious capitalism, where and I think a lot of people, a lot of leaders now sort of kind of understand that. If you look at a lot of businesses out there, um, they having a certain purpose, so it's not driven. Of course, to be able to survive, not only survive but to thrive, you do need to be profiting, but that's not the core purpose. The actual purpose of that business, you'll be other things, the social impact that it's having. So if it's driven by that, and then when it empowers its members, its team, its employees, and creating a culture around that, then I think all this kind of gets mitigated. It may not totally go away because together with that, I think it's also important for the people in that organization to be aligned with the same values themselves.
mm, true.
As an individual, if you're somebody who's driven not by purpose but just by uh, whatever it is, earning the most, getting the most sales or whatever, yes, it's good to be competitive. You do want to be, driven, but at the same time, you got to ask yourself the impact that might be having, the cost to yourself, to your health, to your family, everybody around you. So till the individual recognizes and has their own priorities, reordered, together with then being part of an organization who also share the same values, that can work. So that alignment is important. So if somebody's new in starting out, um, if I were to give advice to somebody very young, setting out, starting their life, I think it'll be good to for them to be coached into what do you need to look into an organization. It's not just the one which pays you the most or the one which has a certain ranking in the market out there. You really got to dig deeper to ask yourself, do I want to work for the organization and why? What do they stand for? And do I stand for the same things? So that'll be somebody down there. Somebody's already there. People who are in their 40s, 50s. If they come to that realization today, what changes can they make?
Mm.
That's probably a more difficult one. But still, I believe if people took time to just reflect and ask themselves what really matters to them most, then they have a choice to make, and they could probably make some choices.
I do hope that this day would come very soon because the amount of stories that I listen to on a daily basis where employees have to deal with um, apathetic managers, very money driven, very target driven. They really don't care if the employee is happy, not happy, how's his life work balance doing. So they end up, the employees, not only being unhappy, but also their performance would get worse. And no one would care enough to ask that employee. So it came to my attention that your performance went a little bit low. Is there something going on that I can help you with? The discussion would be the exact opposite. If you do not improve your performance, then you can consider yourself fired. What's your take on that? What do you think
Yeah.
of this?
Well, obviously, it is about relationship building. If people took more time to build relationships, get to know the people in their teams, and this is where you talk about compassion, empathy. What is empathy? A lot of people sometimes confuse empathy and sympathy. As a manager, as a leader, uh, I think empathy is so important because empathy is really not necessarily agreeing with the other person, but at the
It's
same
just
time,
feeling. Mhm.
yeah, you don't have to agree. You can agree to disagree, but at least you're respecting where they're coming from and their opinions and their thought process. So when you show that, then you can work together. But when it's all about, it's either this way or the highway, and without really taking time to understand the other person's situation, then that's just not sustainable. And that's when you have all these issues, like you say, the stress and mental health can get greatly affected by that. So it's having an environment which is more inclusive, more compassionate. But the question then, like you said, is how do you create that culture? And it does start from the top. It does start from the leaders. When your leaders, right from the top, exhibit that sort of trait, then and they choose the right people, then that can be, filtered all the way down. But it's not an easy one.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Have you ever found yourself in a place where you're not being treated with compassion and you just left?
Uh, I've been very fortunate. I've been very fortunate that everywhere that I have been, or the people I've surrounded myself, maybe subconsciously, it's just that the people I choose to be around with are, and I've been lucky. These days, I'm more conscious. So as you mature, as you go through more experiences, you learn, and you are very careful and very selective in the kind of people you associate yourself with. Um, but generally, I've never seen myself. I've always, occasionally I might have found that, hold on, this is not the right company that I'm in or situation I'm in. But I've been able to get out of that very fast. The best thing for me, I can say, is again, I consider myself very lucky. I have a very supportive family. I'm somebody who I can actually talk very openly about pretty much anything and everything with my life partner. So that is also very important, where you can actually talk and share and express, and they are very supportive of you. Uh, so luckily, I've actually never had any serious challenge, but the times that I had some challenges, when I talk and I'm expressing, then I know that I've got the right people behind my back, and they support me and they're able to, get me out of that situation. But yes, you do find everybody will find, themselves with situations. It's about how you deal with it,
Of
and
course,
what you
not.
do
Yeah.
about it, and how much you sort of hold on to that situation. You got to learn how to just let go of certain things, and then just move on.
Amen. Yes, I totally agree. BJ, thank you so much for sharing all of these insights. Is there anything specific that you'd like the business leaders or any man listening to this episode on compassion, on maybe few steps or few action, very specific action steps that they can take to improve their well-being when it comes to this?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rahaf. Yeah, the one thing I would say to everybody in business, especially in the business world, see if you can find yourself some sort of, I don't want to call it a network. It might have a different connotation, but at the end of the day, it does become a network. A group of people that you can. This would be, you got to build a very strong, trusted relationship with these people, and there are many groups out there, or many ways in which you can do this. And I'm not talking about large groups. I'm talking about, small groups, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 people. Sometimes they're referred to as masterminds. Sometimes they're referred to as, in certain organizations, as forums. But the idea is you become part of these, and this kind of becomes your informal board of advisors. And they would share the same values as you do, and you participate in these. They are highly confidential, but when you get a chance to become part of these, masterminds is a common term for these. They can be great in providing support in so many different ways. And I would urge everybody to become part of something like this. Find something where you will find like-minded people, to your level. But don't, because it can be quite lonely. No matter how big or small a business you're running, how large a team that you might be heading, it is very lonely. So it's important for you to continuously connect with other people who are equally lonely, and for you to form that group where you can actually then
Elevate one
open up to
another.
each other. Um, yeah,
I love that.
that would be my advice. I think it's really important, and look out for these kind of opportunities. They are there.
I love it. Thank you so much, BJ, for being here. I loved having you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahaf. Thank you for having me. And like I said, it was a great honor, and I look forward to meeting you soon in person.
Yes.
Hopefully soon, because now that you're part of BNI, we will get a chance to do that. But I also wish you the very best in your BNI journey.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, thank you.